What's up, guys? Welcome back. Another recording. This is coming right after the last one that I did about trauma. If you didn't see that one, go back and check it out. Click like and subscribe if you're new, and let's get right into it. So, in the last video, I talked about trauma and how it affects us as children based on our limited perspective, and how, as a kid, you think things are life and death when they're not. And because your survival instinct hasn't been fully developed, you banish parts of who you think you're not supposed to be anymore in order for what you think is survival, um, and then you play into life through that frame. So, getting triggered, we're going to talk a little bit deeper now and talk about the subconscious mind. So, the subconscious mind is 95% of your awareness. If I ask you what you had for breakfast this morning, a second ago you didn't know, but now you do. So where it was before it was in your awareness was your subconscious mind. It's basically everything that you know that you're not aware of at this moment. Now, the subconscious, what we don't realize is that there's different parts of our personality. You have a different personality when you talk to your grandmother than the personality that comes out when you're talking to your boss. Or when you're in a classroom, you're acting very different than when you're with your friends at your home, at your house. So what I've realized is that in the society that we grew up in, regardless of who our parents are or whatever, society, we kind of are told that there's certain emotions that are good and then there's other certain emotions that are bad. And because we have this kind of toxic relationship with certain emotions, um, it creates this charge behind those emotions so that when we're experiencing them, it's very intense because there's not just the emotion itself, there's the shame that is behind the emotion. So you're it's like a double hit. So you're basically, you set a criteria for never feeling certain emotions, and then you feel bad about feeling bad. Like, let's say you set a goal to not feel bad. Oh, I felt bad now. Now I'm feeling bad about feeling bad. And then that's the downward spiral, is not having a good relationship with so and so called negative emotions. So this video here is a little bit different. I'm basically going to talk about how all emotions are good because all emotions are, they keep us alive and they're valuable. Let's talk about each emotion real quick. About specifically, I'll talk about fear. Fear is an emotion that we all think is this terrible thing that we're constantly running from. But if you think about it, fear is what keeps you alive. I've talked about it in the past about the fight or flight response. You know, your amygdala of your brain, which is the alarm bell of your brain, it goes bing and it sends cortisol and glucose into your muscles, and that's the fight or flight response. You're tensing up so you can either run, fight, or hide. Now, the survival instinct and experience itself is not designed to be creative. It's not designed to be funny. It's only designed for those three things. So, because of that, you're not going to be very successful if you're always constantly in fear. Funnily enough, our negative, relationship with fear is kind of creating and keeping it alive for longer than it needs to be. There's all these unconscious feelings that are trickling fear throughout our whole lives. We're constantly have this little cortisol drip that's going on all the time. And whatever we resist persists. We're keeping it alive longer than it needs to be. So let's talk about fear. So fear, you experience fear if you see a threat. The cortisol goes through, you either run or fight or you deal with the situation, then you relax, and then you can go back to your normal life. Now, if you're constantly fearing fear or fearing anything in your life, you're not able to relax. And they've even proven, if you watch Simon Sinek on his TED Talk about cortisol and about anxiety and about how people's jobs are killing them, he talks about why that is. It's that, that energy that you're pulling out to run, fight, or hide, it's not just coming out of nothing. In those moments, your fingernail doesn't need to grow. So it shuts down other functions of the body. It shuts down growth. It shuts down the immune system. And if you keep taxing all those areas, your health is going to decline. That's why it's already been proven, mental health, negative mental health leads to disease and a lot of health problems. So what I've realized is that what we're going to do at the very beginning of this video is I'm just going to talk about things that have helped me in my personal journey, and don't take anything as I'm saying as 100% truth or advice over a doctor. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I figure though is that we can help ourselves before we even have to go to the doctor. Still go to the doctor, of course, but why wait is what I'm saying. These are all things that just the understanding alone of these things is giving you a leg up above a lot of people, because this is not things that are taught in our society. So the very first thing that I'm going to talk about here is our relationship to fear or anger or sadness. So if we didn't experience, for example, sadness, what is sadness? Sadness is empathy. It's caring for somebody else. Now, love is empathy and caring for someone else, but it's a different emotion. So love is a giving feeling, and sadness is like, you're feeling almost like despair, but it's still a feeling that is allowing us as social creatures to connect with others, to feel empathy for others. And if we didn't, work together as social creatures, we wouldn't survive as a whole. So again, sadness has its place in the world. All emotions have value and have data that keeps us alive, that allows us to thrive as a society. And so there is no such thing as a bad emotion. The reason that we think that there is bad emotions is because we're taking two things that are not linking them. We're basically saying, oh, being sad is a bad thing, but you're thinking all the time. You're not thinking of the emotion, you're thinking of the state or the experience, the constant experience. Fear is very valuable when you're experiencing it in that moment to keep you alive. It's not valuable if you stay in that experience, if you linger in that experience. So it's a very much different thing altogether. See, what we do, like I said before, when we experience trauma, we take parts of ourselves and we push them down into the depths of our subconscious, and we don't let them come up. And we live in the capitalistic society, in the marketplace. It actually, what we do is we're buying other things, and we're watching TV, and we're drinking a lot of different things, and we're eating food, and we're taking drugs, and we're doing all these things, meeting and dating and all this stuff that's keeping our mind distracted. None of those things are, some of those things are bad relative to different people and where you grew up, but it's not about the thing. It's about, are you using this as an escape or not? Because it's the place it's coming from. Are you watching TV because you're trying to escape, or are you watching TV because you're enjoying this relaxing time? And that's when I realized, like, it's not about the thing, it's about the place it's coming from. Is it coming from desperation or inspiration? So it's crazy how much, if we have these repressed things and we need to be distracted, we have all these escapism tactics that we're trying to avoid the experience within us. And because we're always distracted, we never really feel like it's us anyways. We just feel like it's that thing that triggered us. So a great way to find out going on and deal with trauma, I believe, and this is something that's worked for me, is first of all addressing your subconscious by doing shadow work, asking questions like, why do you keep self-sabotaging, or why do you not deserve success? And your mind will tell you, I do deserve success. What are you talking about? But then if you just sit in with that question and see it as like a probe to see what comes up, and basically what you're trying to do here is you're trying to see, like, well, part of me thinks that this one thing that happened to me, 5 years ago, and ever since then I believed this about myself. There you go. That's good. That's data. You're not making a case for the memory. You're just bringing up what's authentic and real to you. What's real has value. And when you bring that up, what you're able to do, and this is such a beautiful thing, is you're able to take these beliefs that don't even have a leg to stand on usually, and you're able to trace them to their origin and let them go. Because you would be shocked if I told you how much of our memories aren't even real memories anymore. Every time we recall a memory, we reframe a memory, which means, just like I said in past recordings, if you're reframing it all the time, you're upset about a miserable life that you didn't even have. Not saying that all of it's untrue, but a large majority of it has been altered so much because our memories are constantly changing. Another interesting thing is, if no emotions are bad and our relationship to our emotions, we can see that, oh, if I'm sad, there's a reason for that. My survival instinct is telling me, there's something that is going on here. Something needs to be addressed. And then, tackling it from that angle instead of, pushing it down or feeling bad about the sadness. That's another thing. So being able to address things, like, for example, I didn't even think that really things were running me for a long time. I just kind of went through life really doing well and being successful and enjoying, my social life, having a great social life, having a lot of friends, a lot of girlfriends, a lot of, validation. I was a magician in high school. I still am a magician, but I got a lot of validation in high school and after high school for what I did performance wise. And then I started to realize that, when you get all this validation and stuff, you as soon as you get something, you always have the fear of losing that thing. So no matter how popular you are, or how much cool things you have, or how much money you have, or how much of anything you have, there's always that fear of, okay, well, I have all these things. Well, what happens if I lose all these things? And that fear is not going to go anywhere until you address the fact that no matter where you are in your life, the only thing that you can master is this inner experience, this experience of yourself. And then all of your relationship to the world changes. The way you feel about the same emotions that you've dealt with so many times, they're experienced in a different way, in a much more, enjoyable way. Even in the hard parts are more interesting, right? So, for example, being happy, first of all, if that was the goal, think about it. Think about if you were happy every single day for the rest of your life. What I mean by that is every single day you're experiencing the emotion of happiness, like you're laughing, smiling, giggling, and like it sounds amazing. But if you think about it, you'd like it for a little while, but then eventually you'd get bored. Not saying that we want bad things in our lives, but what I am saying though is that the contrast of life is what makes it so interesting. Whenever you watch a movie, you don't want to watch a movie where everything goes perfectly the whole time. The best movies for me are the ones where somebody's going through a terrible time, bad things happen to them, and then they go through all this adversity. They are pushing through pain. They're going through a hard time. They have all these emotions, and then they come out on the other side on top, and they conquer everything, and then they're able to have this great ending to their story. Those are kind of stories that really hit home because you resonate with that. The human experience, there's nothing about it that's easy. It's not, supposed to be easy anyways. It's difficult. It's very difficult. A lot of things in life, disease happens. We lose family members, friends, and all these things that are going to happen eventually. So our experience of those things can be changed, but it has to start with pushing out of what the norm is, our relationship to emotions, which is something that you're not going to get from social conditioning. You're not going to get from the outside world. You have to get it from yourself and from your inner world. And that's basically going against the grain of a lot of things that were taught to you. Like, for example, the goal is to always be happy. If the goal was always to be happy, then you're basically saying that the emotions that God gave you, or if you don't believe in God, the universe gave you, the emotions that you have on this earth, that there's only a couple that you're supposed to have, which isn't true. All emotions, if you really sit down and think about it, have value for specific reasons, to keep you alive, to help you connect with the people you care about, or, whatever it may be. All emotions have that. So why is it that we feel so bad about when certain things happen, we beat ourselves up? Why is that? Why is it that we, set a bar for feeling a certain way, and when we don't hit it, we beat ourselves up? It doesn't make sense. But we're not doing it consciously. A lot of it's unconscious, and taking the reins in terms of dealing with the first step with trauma is by, first of all, just sitting with yourself, not watching TV, not doing any of these things, and experiencing what's it like to date me. By that, I mean, like, what's it like to be in a relationship with me? Like right now, if I had somebody else be transported into my body and they had to rate the scale of my experience of myself on a scale from 1 to 10, would they rate it a 10, or would they rate it like a 2 or 3? And that's a really good place to start with, what is your default mode? And, and it's okay if you're at 3 or 4. You're not going backwards by knowing that. You're just bringing a little bit more awareness to that. And, if you are at a 3, 4, 5, or 6 out of 10, and you're admitting that, that I could be a lot better, dealing with things that you've pushed down, things that you about yourself that maybe you don't like, or on an even deeper layer, maybe it's a part of your identity. On an identity level, this is really deep right here. I'm going to say this real quick. If you have a criteria for success, and then eventually you keep going through the pain of being the person that's different than that, you're going through the pain, going through the pain, going through the pain, and then eventually, boom, your identity makes that a part of who you are, just to avoid feeling that pain over and over again. And that becomes a part of who you think you are now. So now, as a reflection of that identity, to operate on the outside of that, it's going to take work because it's attached to who you think you are. We're constantly trying to act in alignment with who we think we are. So deep identity level change is knowing where you are, where you actually are, not where you're saying that you are, and then knowing where you want to go, and only holding on to the beliefs and the mindsets and, all the things that will get you closer to that direction. Also, like I said before, we have different emotions. If you can think of different motivations for every emotion, so that no matter what feeling you have, you're still moving in that direction. If you're feeling angry or upset or petty, think of a petty motivation to get you towards that direction. If you're feeling, motivational and happy, think of, that kind of uplifting motivation. All these different motivations, so that no matter what experience you have within you, no matter what state you find yourself in, you are going to be just fine, and you're going to be moving towards your goals regardless of what emotional state you're in. Most of our conquering, like our issues and our limitations on this earth as we're human beings, are not logical. They're emotional, because we're emotional beings, right? We pay to have our emotions spiked, and when we watch Netflix, or we order on Amazon, or we send an invite to a bunch of friends, or we go to a party, all those things are for emotions. They're for feelings that we get as a byproduct of those things. So what I'm saying is that, first of all, with trauma, there are, like, what I believe that the first step for me was just being able to understand things about myself that I believed at one point that limited me, that were taking me in the opposite direction of where I wanted to go, and then tracing back, where did I get that belief from? Who told that to me, or what instance happened in my childhood or in my life that made me think that was true? And then tracing that back, and then starting to see that, oh yeah, this happened when I was a little kid. And then as I was going through as a kid, it affected my dating life, because I started to play into a frame that I'm just the person that doesn't do that, and doesn't act that way, and doesn't get that kind of entitlement. And so I didn't really blossom into my dating life until, pretty much out of high school because I had a specific frame that I was playing into. I mean, I dated in high school, but I didn't really thrive until after high school. And that was because of beliefs that were limiting me of what I thought was my identity. Same thing with losing things. I always lost jackets and like backpacks and random things ever since I was a little kid. I always procrastinated on my homework. There was little things like that I kept doing, and then eventually I just thought it was who I was. So I just kept doing it to be in alignment with who I thought I was. It's crazy, but that's exactly what happens in our life on a day-to-day basis, and we don't even know that it's running us. By the time we're 35 years old, almost our entire life is being rerun on a set of programs that have been all put into place. And for a while, we didn't think that it was possible to break out of the programming. And now we know better with Dr. Joe Dispenza's, Becoming Supernatural, the book that he wrote, the studies that he's doing on heart-brain coherence. They're proving now that no matter if you're 65 years old and you've lived a certain life and you've trained or you practiced being that person, it's never too late to break out of an old paradigm. It's you just have to be open to being out of your comfort zone. Dealing with trauma is very uncomfortable. Accepting who you are on a deep level and dealing with all of the demons and the issues of your past and accepting yourself for those things, and accepting all emotion, like being okay with all emotions, and realizing that they're all good. And instead of labeling the way that we feel, because our words color our reality. Like if I say I'm sad, you can't pinpoint that on your body what sadness is. You just know the experience because we've memorized it. So we hear sad and then we play into that, almost like an actor who's reviewing a script or a play. It sounds crazy, but that's exactly what happens. Our reality starts with our communication. As we're talking about what we're feeling, we are also playing into that exact feeling. They have done so many studies on this. The placebo effect is another example. World War II and other wars where they ran out of morphine and they were low on morphine, they ran out, and they were giving them saline solutions and telling them that it was morphine, and they were keeping so many people, thousands of people, alive because of the placebo effect, because the mind wanted to survive so badly and wanted the saline solution to be morphine so badly that the mind actually created, its own opioid and its own or perception of opioid. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but they stayed alive because of the belief and only the belief. I'm going to end with one quick story before we go here, and it's a story that's true, and it's a story of a railway worker that was stuck inside of a refrigerator car. Turns out he was writing on the wall, and he said, "I'm stuck, nothing to do but wait. Still stuck here, freezing, and then I may freeze to death." And then at the very bottom, he says, "These may be my last words," and they in fact were. Turns out this guy, he died, but the refrigerator or the freezing apparatus was malfunctioning. It never got below 42 degrees the entire night. So he had no reason to believe and to feel that was an issue at all. But he resigned himself to his fate, even though there was no need for that. And we sometimes, no matter what the temperature of our circumstances is, we kind of become the victim of our own illusion and believe that we are in the hypothetical refrigerator car, that our life is already set and pre-planned for us. And in the same way that placebo effect works for the saline solutions or worked for the refrigerator car, because it works both ways and it's always working. There's not times when it's working and when it isn't. It's always working. It never stops. Your mind, your capability of thought has infinite potential, both negative and positive. And your awareness of that and your ability to play into that gives you full access to literally anything you want. You think about it, we break world records every year. Why is it that it takes so long for us to, be just so much more aware of how the infinite potential of what we're capable of? There is no limit. The only limits are the paradigms that we're breaking out of. Roger Bannister with the 4-minute mile. Within a month, people were breaking the 4-minute mile. People in high school were breaking it. Before that, they were doing studies from scientists saying our cardiovascular system is not built for it. Our bone structure isn't right. There were scientifically proving that this wouldn't work. Scientifically proving, things that we know are true now. So it goes back to what I said before about we're always trying to be, looking for more proof of whatever identity we have and what truths we know, because the unknown is scary, and I understand that more than anybody. I know the unknown is scary. I'm about to go on a trip to Mexico, and a bunch of things happened with it was on the other side of Mexico, but it was still scary, and I was like, man, what I need to realize is that life takes risk, and without risk, you can't live a fulfilling life without taking risks. You just can't. So, I'm taking a risk, and I'm happy to take the risk. And every time I get to push past my comfort zone and get out of my comfort zone and take risks and live a life that is worthy of living, that makes me feel more fulfilled. Doing things like this, making a video that might help somebody, who knows, that could relate to what I'm saying, that maybe could save a life. You never know. People go through hard times all the time. We're at a place now where there's more addiction than ever before. Nobody knows how to solve these problems because the world is divided. There's too much information. People don't know where to go to get good information. So I know that there's value in what I'm saying, and I know that, who knows, one day, with my consistency of putting out good information, that somebody might get the help that they need, and that's worth it for me. So I hope somebody got something out of this video. Continue to like and subscribe and comment if you like this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.